So I'm super excited to have you on the show today, Amber.
Yeah. Thanks. I am excited too. I've enjoyed following what you're doing and getting to know you over the last 9 months. And yeah, this will be fun.
Oh, good. So Amber, you have an interesting background in that you do a lot of brand strategy work with people. You help people get really clear in their businesses. But how did you get into that work originally? Because you've built a really successful business from a brand strategy standpoint, and you're doing some other fun things now in addition to. But how did you get into the branding work, and how did you get into kind of like helping people market themselves better?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the compliment. From the money person, I will take that if you think I'm doing well. Awesome. So previous to starting Strategic Partners, which is my brand strategy agency marketing firm, if I kind of go back a little bit before, I had done a number of sales marketing related jobs. And even going back to in college, cold calling like a telemarketer and selling hotel accommodations. And I wrote a blog post about it a few years ago about how it was one of the worst jobs, but the fact that I was successful basically showed me I could do anything.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that led to some other marketing related jobs, but particularly working in television advertising was the most direct thing previous to starting the agency. And I work with a lot of small businesses. You go out, you develop your own relationships, you get your own clients. And I realized where I was selling ad space, what I was actually good at and didn't sort of realize I had a skill for until I was doing it, was helping clients understand what their brand is and what their strategy around that should be. So we would figure out what were they saying, what was their market positioning. I would be there on the spot developing their messaging, putting out their TV commercials and suggesting to them what they needed to do next, even if it wasn't TV advertising. Like I could see the gaps if they had an issue with their website or their messaging. So that's what ultimately led me to starting the agency, was from having worked directly with businesses, but I was bound. I could only sell them TV, where what I realized that they need and the skill was in selling the strategy work and then also helping them implement marketing in whatever channel was best for them.
How was it for you when you initially said, okay, I'm going to go from, I was going to say 9-to-5 job, but I'm sure that in TV it was more than a 9-to-5 job, to opening your own doors? What was that like for you?
A bunch of swear words, holy effing, you know what? So it started as like a feeling. I call it, I say it's like a call thought inside of you. And I see this in tons of other people that like I'll mentor or coach. And I don't know if you've experienced that, where it just starts to sit there as a thought, but it's all wrapped up in fear, because you already, if you really get quiet with yourself, you already know the answer that you want to do it, but you're stuck in fear about how to do it. So I definitely had all of that for a few months leading up to it. Was not that I didn't know I wanted to pursue my own path, but it was the fear of how do I, also because the industry I worked in, build my business while I was there. You know, that's fantastic when people do have a situation where you can start building your company while you're still employed. That wasn't something I could do. So I made the full decision to go into business for myself. But in an ideal situation, that would have been great if I could have built some revenue runway before going in all in.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask, is whether you had been able to moonlight at all or do any kind of prep work at all. What did you do then did you have savings, or you don't have to get too detailed here because it's a very personal question, but I think this is really important because so many people think there's one way to start a business, or you need to have 6 months worth of revenue or, expenses in hand. Or I always like to ask people this question because everyone does it so many different ways, and it doesn't mean you can't be successful depending on, there isn't one specific path.
Right. So in reality, we weren't great at having a ton of savings going into it, because I think at the time that my career was building and my husband's career was building, we were also building a lifestyle that fit along with that career. And so we were buying a house. My husband had just graduated college. So while we were trying to build the runway, I didn't do a great job of knowing like I've got a 6-month runway. And so that's not going to work for everybody. Some people know that they need greater security. Not that this, I'm not recommending this for everyone, but I knew that I'm the kind of person that if I commit to something, I will whatever it takes to see it through, which can be stressful for people. I'm back there, so I would have made some changes, but I think what I'm to be successful in it rather quickly, a very clear vision about who I was serving. I mean, I'm a brand strategist, so like I just skills that I have, and I was super laser clear. I had a list of prospects and understanding what I thought they needed, like the minute that I opened my doors. And so I immediately started selling on and like having conversations, consults, and I got my first client within 2 weeks and the next client 2 weeks. So that helped to initially within the first 5 weeks have revenue at least expenses plus some. So I the lesson in that is if someone is launching their business and doesn't have a savings runway, do the best you can to just dive in. And I think of it as learning as you go. One of my mentors, she says, iterate as you go. And I live by that. When you're in the beginning phases, there's certain things that are useful to get clear on, know that you're starting before it's perfect.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line there between the, go, / let's get a few things clear so that you're not kind of going down a rabbit hole. But I'm always fascinated by that because there are certain personality types, and I think you're one of them, right? From a quick start standpoint, who's just like, all right, let's go. I'll figure it out as I go. I'm not I'm afraid, but I'm not afraid to try.
Yeah.
And not everybody's comfortable with that. I think there's so many other people who do the like, I'll get all my ducks in a row. I'll talk to somebody about my branding and I'll have the perfect logo. And it's a place to hide too, right? To be like, oh, I don't have to actually go sell anything because I'm busy preparing, right?
Right.
Which, as we all know, can be detrimental if you need to replace an actual income with dollars immediately.
Right. So when I'm working with clients, because now part of my business is to coach others that are launching or growing their businesses, that's where we have that conversation because they can build it how they want. That works for them. But what doesn't work, to your point, is if there's a need for revenue and they're hiding in something, then we need a quick start.
How long did you take just building the core part of your business before you started thinking, all right, I think maybe there's some other stuff I can be doing here?
Are you referencing strategic partners, the core business before I launched more product lines? Is that what you're referencing?
Yeah. And you call them product lines. I mean, other people call them different things, but you're doing a lot of coaching and training and teaching now these days. And, it's a very different business model than a traditional consulting model, which is, I think, kind of what you were doing in the beginning, right?
Yeah, yes. So in the beginning, here's what's interesting. In the beginning of strategic partners, I was giving away all the consulting by means of having clients come on board and doing their ongoing marketing. So we operated like their outsourced marketing department, running their digital ads, placing their media buys. So that was an interesting journey when I finally realized that was the thing that we need to get paid for and that we're good at. So transformation. Going into starting my business, I do believe, looking back, that I knew early on that my passion is in personal development and business strategy, business coaching, but I had not yet built a business to stand on and say, see, look, I actually know how to build a business. So I launched Strategic Partner with a focus on brand strategy and marketing for small businesses. And about a year and a half in, or about 2 years in, a lot of people in the community that saw what I was building would come to me for mentorship or coaching. And that's when I realized, okay, maybe I'm far enough along to start testing this coaching model. And that's when I started beta testing, taking what we did with companies through the strategy agency and putting that into a model that it could work for like a solopreneur. So that started about 2 years into the journey, and it really took off soon, not long after that time. So, and I at the time I was calling it Amberdella Consulting. It's now Impact Academy. So it does like a different business. Strategic Partners and Impact Academy, they kind of look like they're two different businesses, but really Impact Academy is a product and Strategic Partners. But really over the last year, it's gotten up and going where it operates now as its own entity with a support team. And we've the same way that Strategic Partners has all of our sales processes and marketing, Impact Academy now has all of that for itself as well.
How have you found, because you're located in the Midwest, and I know that a lot of your initial work was with, local businesses, people that you had contacts with, how has it been to transition to a greater, bigger audience on different platforms like that?
Yeah, well, what I realized in doing the continual evaluating, what are the guiding principles that guide the work and guide the company, that we are big in being involved locally and supporting local. But what I realized is a bigger guiding principle is that we strive to work with people that are passionate about being their best. And I didn't want us to be bound and limited by only working with those mission-driven entrepreneurs that were within our region. Mm-hmm. So really, I back to what is the mission of the company and what are the values. And it just naturally, in some ways, I guess maybe it felt like I outgrew the feeling of staying local. Our local community is amazing. We have a lot of awesome clients, and I love being connected to wider communities. That's how we met, from different communities that we're involved in. And I think sometimes you go where like-minded people are, regardless of location. So we've just naturally been transitioning our messaging over time, which has naturally been calling in more and more people. And now through Strategic Partners, we've had clients out of country, clients in other states. And so naturally, it just continues evolving. The more that I speak our message, our language, over time, it keeps growing, and the right people get connected to what our brand is all about. And then they come in because they align with that. Yeah. So it's repositioning to align to the values and the mission, and less about goal.
Yeah, I love that. You've grown pretty quickly over the years, and I'm curious from your perspective, what has been the hardest piece of that puzzle in terms of growing a business, bringing on staff, figuring out the money stuff? What has been sticking points for you?
Oh, well, so early on, so I started the business in 2015, and I definitely at that time was subscribing to a belief model of pushing, working hard. I was so proud that I could grind, that I had grit. And I have gone on a journey the last few years of shifting that belief system and learning how that actually, was a negative belief for me and sort of causing me to burn out. And I've really shifted to working in flow. Looking back at the time when I was operating under that belief, and I was kind of proud to work 70 hours a week, which I totally do not subscribe to anymore. I had set a specific goal. I said I wanted to build $1 million a year revenue business within 5 years. I definitely always try to stay true to mission and not let money be the driver. But I think knowing that that was there as a goal. So your question was, what was the most challenging part? I think it was how rapid we were growing, sort of like self-imposed, because within a year and a half, I hired my first 5 people, and that was like crazy. And these are W-2 employees.
Yeah.
And so I say it's difficult, but I also know that was like how I'm wired. High achieving, high driver, all that. But maybe, in retrospect, I wish I would have learned earlier how to work from flow and not that theory of pushing up against the river, but just breathing and going with the flow a little bit more, because, with that did come growing pains of sometimes hiring people that didn't have the clearest scope of work, or it wasn't clear that they were a fit for values. And we kind of figured that out as we go, where now we have our values clearly defined. We can even present that when we're exploring who we're hiring and looking at how they align with that. We actually have an onboarding plan. So there was definitely a lot of growing pains in that, and having some natural turnover because of that, because you're figuring it out as you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just talking about the hiring conversation alone, right? Like you talk about that for hours in terms of the pros and cons. I do think we have to fail a little bit with that sometimes to then be like, oh, wait, what is the version for us that actually works, and to then start getting some of those systems in place. Because most people don't go in being like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to map out all of my operational slash HR slash, everything on the back end strategy, because to grow, you need to be selling. And obviously that was your primary target. And then a lot of people have that same situation where it's kind of you're drinking from the fire hydrant going, oh my God, we can't keep up with this. We need to hire. What does that look like? Are they contract people? Are they payroll people? If they're payroll, then there's this whole extra layer of management required. And you still have to just keep up and getting the work done. So it can be very exhausting for sure.
Yeah, and I did my best to just be really transparent with anyone that comes on board, contractor, employee, any partner we work with. Like I am pretty like natural about just laying it on the table. And this way I'm letting people know these are the strengths. This is what I believe we have to offer, but this is also the reality. And so I did my best to be really authentic and honest with team members coming in so that they could see the value that they would get in all of the learning, but also to help them manage any of their anxiety or expectations. Like when it felt like things were disorganized, I could help bring them back to remember that we're an agile growing startup, and this is what you gain and get to learn from that experience, and how can we use this as an opportunity for resiliency, or how can I learn from it to make the company better? What systems do I need to put in place? So I think that was important, that I was just honest about what we were and where we were at.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a really great takeaway, because it can be so hard not to be honest, depending on where you come from. And I don't know if you had any managerial responsibilities in previous work environments, but, we often will bring sort of our other version of, ourselves, or a different version of, if as an employee to our new businesses. And that can cause a lot of confusion because we're not super clear necessarily on what kind of culture we're trying to create, or how to go about doing that. And then when, you can have those ups and downs with potential new staff, or like, who's on first? What's happening here?
Right.
Do you have staff all locally, or are you working with people kind of across the board from other locations now too?
Most of the staff is local. We do have one in a neighboring state, and then we have a contractor we partner with in California, and referral partners in other states. But most of the staff are local. And as there's opportunities to grow, we tend to have contractors that are not local, just by way of the kind of work that's done. Most of the local staff are hands-on, customer facing, but then there's other work, design, or graphics, or something tech related. Those relationships really work in a true contractor model, and we've got a great network of contractors around the country that we work with on those specific projects.
Yeah. Did you think of yourself as a good project manager before you started your business, or do you think that's been a learned expertise?
No, I do think, I think that's been kind of a natural skill set from being a strategic thinker, but there's definitely that pain point window of having to let go, of having to learn how to be a project manager, while also teaching the skills, or people bring some skills to the role, but we have our own process of doing it. So I think if anything, because I have such a value for, we call it a value for entrepreneurship, where we want everyone to be cultivated to be their own leaders. Early on, I really wanted to hire people that were leaders, that could take some direction and run with it. And the pain point that I learned is that as much as people want to be leaders, they also still need feedback and direction. And looking back, I can see how far I come, when I used to feel agony about providing feedback when people were performing at less than what I believed it should be. And so that's how I had to learn that I have to not just be a project manager and give them tasks. I have to be a leader and manager that helps hold them accountable for the things that we've stated that are within their work responsibility, and to help show them their opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
That was something I had to learn how to give proper feedback.
It's so hard too. It's that whole concept of manager versus leader, right? The manager just likes to dictate or maybe likes is the wrong word, or tends to dictate / just pass down information, versus leadership, which is really about growth and training and making sure everybody's kind of singing from the same song sheet. And it's not an easy thing to do.
Right. Yeah. And as I was saying it, I know it might sound so petty, but really, I remember those early experiences with my first team members. I could agonize and not sleep for weeks because I felt bad about having a conversation around revealing lack of performance. And it's just crazy to look at now, right? Because there's such a healthy way to do that as a leader. And it's great to now have those skills that it's really the best gift you can give your team, to be that leader for them. But that was definitely some mindset things that I worked through, from having to shift from feeling bad to saying, no, this is an opportunity to support them. If you care about your team, it's your responsibility to have these ongoing conversations so that opportunity to step into their growth and not be blindsided if they're not performing.
Yeah. Oh, I love this conversation so much, because I think as women in particular, we're already one step behind, because there's this inherent, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings mode.
I know.
Because we're both from the Midwest, we both have this extra maybe. But there is that piece of if I have to tell somebody something negative, I'd rather not have to say it. And the reality is, it's not about that, right? There's somehow in our brains, we have this, if I, as the boss, I'm going to have to be the mean person here. And it really isn't about that. It's kind of like having a kid and helping them take to the next step, of learning and growth situation. And if you can reframe it for yourself like you did, I think you'd be so much healthier, because then you don't end up in the only time I'm going to talk to you is when I'm castigating you kind of version of a relationship with your employees.
Absolutely. Yes. So that's been a great learning along the way that I've experienced.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of the conversation, because I think that especially I would say in today's world of, if you're primarily in the online space, there's a lot of, talking about building a team, but it's kind of with this expectation that you don't necessarily have to manage it the same way you would with a brick and mortar office space. And it's not true at all. No, because anyone involved in any project still needs to have a clear scope of expectations. What are they responsible for? At what timeline? How are we measuring the success of the performance of that scope of services? And so we've really grown a lot, and I've improved a lot in providing that clear framework, whether it's an employee, a contractor, or a service we're hiring for. And the way that we do business with clients as well. Really clear scope of services and helping the client understand, what are we providing to you, and what are the boundaries, how do we communicate, and how are we going to measure the success of this? So yeah, that's really powerful and helpful for businesses to get clear on that. Yeah, well, and super important to be able to do that with your clientele as well. I always talk about the contract, the actual, physical agreement being a wonderful education tool, so that everyone can be on the same page about what you are doing and what you aren't doing. And I think you probably do something similar, where it's so easy to say, okay, well, the contract is just something that, we have to have it because the lawyers say we have to have it. So let's just do it quick. Nobody read it and get done with it. But when you sit down with the client and actually review all of that stuff before anybody puts, ink to page for a signature, can be a really wonderful relationship building task too.
Yes. As I'm reflecting, as we're talking, everything that's working and flow today is because of a past mistake in my business. I mean,
that's true.
I think if there's anyone going into business or your first few years, I think you just have to embrace that is part of the learning and journey, is that you figure it out as you go. Because the fact that we can feel confident and have those great conversations around contracts with clients today came from being too loosey-goosey and having some problems with past contracts. So
Here's why a verbal contract doesn't work so well. Okay, it worked okay, and then it didn't work, and then we started having a written one, and okay, then we didn't really go through it, or it wasn't robust enough, and then we have to change it again. And yeah, I think you're right. It's a layering toward, feeling really comfortable, so that you can take it to that next level and say, okay, well, the basics are now in really good shape. And I think that frees you up to start imagining other versions of revenue stream or other ways to work with people.
Absolutely. And I think that's what allowed then for me to pursue more with an Impact Academy. Where we got a solid structure to strategic partners. We've got our core team. We've got the sales process. We, have how we deliver services. We've got it running as a pretty smooth running machine. Made it feel so much easier to say, okay, now this isn't just moving a million directions. This is saying, how can we lean deeper into my personal passion and mission? And I'm fired up and I'm alive when I'm hosting retreats and I'm speaking at workshops and I'm coaching people. And it supports our overall mission of the whole company, which is to help people and companies who are passionate about being their best. So, but I think the key there is I had sort of started those efforts a few years ago and it felt slow in the beginning. Like I'd do a speaking thing here and there and have a coaching client here and there. But until everything was running pretty smoothly in strategic partners, then I could finally really in the last 8 months step much more clearly into coaching. And that just takes time to get things in a row. You can have your wish list of all the things you might want to do, but it's just a matter of choosing when you're going to, one of my mentors says, put it all in the cloud and review it every few weeks or months. And then you take something out of the cloud and you put it into action. It doesn't mean that the 10 things in the cloud you might want to do, you need to do them all at once, because then nothing works well.
And it doesn't mean that you won't ever do them, because I think sometimes we think like, oh, if I don't jump on it right away, then it's, I'll be distracted by something else and it'll never happen. We can actually be kind of strategic around the picking and choosing of all the brainstorm ideas that come up when you're exercising or in that dream state or whatever it might be.
Exactly. And I think, coming into this year, I had some things I had thought I would have accomplished but the timing just wasn't right. And I think even though we might write something down, like for example, last year I said, I'm going to write a book and it just didn't happen. Every time I wanted to do it, there was just too many other things that were priority and it felt there was resistance there. Well, now this June, when I revisited it and I just felt different about it and looked out ahead at my calendar and said, I feel confident and more comfortable that I can reserve these spaces in my calendar to actually really start this writing process. And so it's not a failure that I didn't do it last year. It was that I pulled it out of the cloud now. Now is the right time.
Mm-hmm. How often do you revisit, big goals? For example, you had said when you first started, you wanted to hit $1 million in annual revenue within 5 years. How often are you rechecking on the sort of short-term, mid-term, long-term goals for yourself and the business?
Well, I think I'm ball person because my mind just thinks in it, and because I'm coaching clients around it, I'm thinking about these things every few days. I think though most clients healthy like annually, but then quarterly really look at again, how does it align to what you established annually, and being open to being agile in how you implement it. So what I mean is there are certain core things that really usually don't change, like your mission and your guiding principles. However, your strategies and how you're going to make that mission come true, those things can sometimes have to be adjusted as you grow. So in my case, I just live and breathe this all the time. Formally, we do 2 team retreats a year, winter and summer. So, for most businesses, I recommend if they're that quarterly, that's what we do with our clients.
Yep, I would agree with that.
I was curious how you did that.
I think I'd love to live in strategy land as well. But obviously there's always that balance between, planning and thinking futuristically versus actually getting work done. So there has to be some version of it. But I do think, I've seen lots of people who kind of put a plan together and then stick it in a drawer or on the shelf and then kind of forget to go back to it too. So I wanted to touch on that because I think you're somebody who is constantly, looking at reassessing, but also giving yourself space to not, freak out if you haven't hit every single, milestone that you might have set 6 months ago or whatever it might have been. So I think it's an important thing for people to think about is, what works for you and what's going to continue to drive your business forward. The other piece of the puzzle from what you're building that I think is great is that you didn't let your initial revenue stream go when you got excited about doing some other stuff. You found a way to incorporate it and fold it into, the core piece of your business. And I see a lot of people, especially in the early stages, you get some traction and then kind of get bored because I think entrepreneurs tend to be very, like, oh, what's the next new thing? So you get kind of bored with what's, basically gotten you your foundation and then sometimes try to pivot entirely 100%. And that's just such a disaster from a revenue standpoint a lot of times.
Absolutely. And I definitely went through a long window of time where I was struggling with feeling that they were two separate businesses. And it was really a few months ago that I finally had a breakthrough and just spoke with the team and talking everything clear and hearing them share how aligned it all felt. It helped a lot to finally realize that while they may look like two different businesses, we don't need to treat these as separate things. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of prospective clients come in through strategic partners. They might need marketing, but through conversation, they're better to start with some personal and business coaching with me. And so I work with our team where we speak all the language. So we're about just helping to find the best solution. So even if a team member's at a business event, and there's something comes up in conversation and it sounds like someone's a great fit for a personal development retreat, that team member is empowered to suggest that. We don't view our team as only working for one side of the business or the other. That's actually what I think has helped us make a big breakthrough is that the team knows that they work for the same company and both sides of the company are the same company.
Yeah, it isn't so siloed that it's I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know how to talk about it. I think that's really great. And so it's, that version of let's have different channels and none of them will ever interact is very old school. And I don't think it works in our current economy. And it doesn't work out with our current brain, the way we think about things, because you just get a lot of infighting, from a management standpoint when that happens, when it's, I don't know what those people are doing. And, there's sort of question mark about that. Nobody feels, very, fully part of a full team that way.
Right. And it was just exhausting for me because I don't want to feel split. And I mean, ultimately, and I think what I had to come to realization was I built strategic partners that I wanted of us as a company and not just think of me, which has worked and that's great. But ultimately, I am still the leader of the overall mission. And I just had to get out of my own way and realize that the team just wanted to be informed and once they're informed about what we offer, they support it fully. It was really, I was treating it as like, this is my coaching over here and team, you just take care of clients over here. But also as the coaching has grown, it requires team support to handle some of the onboarding sales calls. And we just found a really natural, nice way where it's integrated. And some team members are more specifically working on one side of the business, but we're all informed about how all of it works together. And that just helped a lot. Just to get it out there and show them the whole picture of this is everything we have going on. So even if you don't work on that side of the business, you know how this all works together and work in everything that we're doing here.
I think that's really empowering. I love that. So I ask everybody this question before on every session, and I'm curious from your perspective how you would define Zen Money.
Ooh, Zen Money. So, okay, this is my thought. My approach on this might be kind of different or out there. How I approach that is that working in flow, meaning the more that, and this really, because my heart center spot, a lot of my business coaching clients are heart centered healers, artists, creative service providers. And the more that we can be in a state of flow, rooted in your purpose, knowing what your mission is, allowing that to steer your work, the easier that it feels to allow the money to flow. This is a long answer, but I think of Zen Money as being rooted in your authenticity and flow. That's that's the short version. There you go.
Like it. That'll be our soundbite.
Alignment. Zen Money alignment.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. Amber, I know you have a lot of stuff going on. I want to make sure that everyone knows where they can connect with you. What would be the best way to check out what you're doing?
Yeah. So impactacademy.com, that will get you to anything you might like help with. And for people who might like just a weekly transformation, personal development email, impactacademy.com/BST. That stands for bite-sized transformation.
Oh, nice.
So that's a lot of people have enjoyed. It's a helpful way for them to get weekly personal development, business development strategies and advice. And you can opt out anytime. But that's a lot of people are enjoying that. That's been a fun project of the last 5 months, and nobody's opted out yet. So I've really been having fun with that.
Oh, that's great. You have to have those things be something that's entertaining that you feel good about to keep the momentum going, for sure. We will put links to all of the ways you can connect with Amber in the show notes. Amber, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, Liz.